Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Silbert. Welcome to How to Create a Classroom Environment so that no child fails being Jewish. I know you all signed up for this, and I'm so glad you're here. But I have to begin by thanking you, because your educators, your teachers, your principals, your educational directors, and I know, because I'm a teacher, I know what it's like to be a teacher, have a family, take extra courses. You're doing a lot, and you're helping children. You're helping children every single day. But you can't help children unless you have an environment that is conducive to learning. And that's the whole part one of this program. But before I even begin, I want to thank you. I want to thank every one of you for being here and for being teachers and administrators. It's a very difficult job. So why don't you all just shake hands with the person next to you, behind you, and just thank them. You know what? Even better. Stand up, all of you stand up, and give yourselves a standing ovation. That's beautiful. You're really doing a wonderful job. Now, I want you to take out a piece of paper, and with a pen, pencil, doesn't matter. In the upper left-hand corner, I want you just to put like a little sailboat. In the upper right-hand corner, put a little flower. Lower left, put a heart, and then in the lower right, put the moon. Now what I want you to do is, wait a minute, some of you aren't even doing, no one's listening? You're not, I see a lot of you, you're not even listening. What are you doing? Some of you are cheating. You're asking the person next to you, what did she just say? And also, you're not even prepared. You're all confused because you didn't even come in here prepared. Wow. Okay, stop. All of you just stop. What just happened? It's not your problem. You did nothing wrong. It's me. I gave you too much, too fast. You weren't prepared, and I'm making you feel terrible because I'm insulting you, I'm criticizing you. So stop, take a deep breath. Think about how you felt when I just said to you, stand up and give yourselves a standing ovation, and I complimented you and made you feel good. Now think, how did you just feel when I just went on, insulting, criticizing, sarcastic, accusing you of something you weren't even guilty of? You didn't want to work with me. You were getting anxious, you were getting angry, and confused. Think back to a few seconds before that. You felt so good. You were with me. I'm the teacher. I had you as my class, and you're going to listen to me. You were happy to listen to me. I created an environment conducive to learning. The person who has all that power in that classroom to create such an environment is you. It's the teacher, the administrator, whoever's working with that child. But how do you do this? How we're going to do it is we're going to have part one of the workshop, and we're going to focus on the acronym STRONG. Our company is called STRONG, and we're going to discuss why it's called STRONG in a few minutes. We're going to talk about how it builds emotional and social strength by following the STRONG method. Okay? Next, we're going to do part two. And we're then going to focus on strong learning. Learning. And that, again, is an acronym, LEARN, which cannot happen if the student doesn't have that strength and emotional and social foundation. Part three, we talk about all the challenges educators face. Classes are too large. You always get someone in the class that kind of ruins the whole lesson. How do you deal with all this? All different levels. You have lower levels, kids who just walk in, they don't know the letters of the alphabet, and others are ready for prayer. So how do you do this? These are challenges we face, even if we have the emotional and social and cognitive facets of learning. Let's continue, and I'll show you how. We're going to begin with promoting the emotional and social strength. To create such an environment, you need to focus on the word strong. Strong is a word that we put together as an acronym. And let me show you what it means. It's an acronym. It stands for self-esteem, trust, responsibility, options, needs, and goals. You don't have to take notes on this because we're going to be giving every one of you this sheet so that you have it and you know what it is. Okay, next, we're going to begin with self-esteem. That's the first thing. And the interesting thing about self-esteem is that it's composed of many things. People look at it like you feel good about yourself. Oh, I just got the award for such and such, or I'm the best baseball player. It's not that simple. Self-esteem is knowing that your most important, significant others think you're great. Think about yourself. Picture when you walk into a room, and who are your significant others, okay? There may be peers now, or people you work with, family members. If you think they think you're the greatest person, you're going to walk in and you're going to feel great. But if you walk into a room, as one mother once said to me, she said, I've got to move out of here because I moved into an area where I feel like everybody's wearing black shoes and I'm wearing brown. She's right. You can walk in to another place and you don't feel so great. It's a perception. How you feel your significant others perceive you at that moment. And it begins with mom, dad, family members, and then goes to the teachers. You hold so much power. Actually, I don't know if teachers realize how much power, especially when you're with those little children who are just beginning, or you're with the children at that when they're changing from middle school or from elementary to middle school, and they're so they just feel so insignificant sometimes because they're so confused. So at this point, what you say, what you do is critical, and it's a perception, how they perceive it. The second thing is physical and emotional safety. The environment has to be safe for them, physical and emotional. So both things. 3, being part of a family, being part of a school, a community. That feeling of belonging helps promote a feeling of self-worth. Knowing that they are accepted and supported by significant others. When children know, just like I did at the beginning, I accepted you. I respected you. I showed you that I thought you were great. You felt good. Number 5, logical boundaries. Children need rules. They need boundaries because they're not quite sure. We all need them actually because you're not sure whether you should go this far or go this far, but they have to be logical. When children break a rule, you have to think about why did they break it. Maybe it made more sense to break that rule. So when you set up boundaries, they must be logical. Number 6 is having parents and teachers with high self-esteem. Think about yourself. When you're with a parent, you're with a teacher, that's other significant other. If they have high self-esteem, that helps the child. Finally, being respected by their others, by their significant others, and in turn respecting them. Those are critical factors in promoting positive self-esteem. Speaking of respect, there's an old Jewish tale, I don't know if it was how many thousands of years ago, but I had read it years and years ago in a book when I was teaching in Hebrew school. And I love telling this, talking about respect. It's creating mutual respect. The king and his sons. The king is walking along the street with his 2 sons, and it starts to rain. So the king pulls out his umbrellas, and he puts an umbrella over one son, and he puts an umbrella over the other son's head, and he's walking. And the people come up to him and they say, "You're the king. Your son should be putting the umbrellas over your head." And the king says, "How will they learn respect if I don't show it?" I just think that little story says it all. You must have that mutual respect. When I was speaking to you and telling you you're not listening, you're not prepared, it showed such disrespect. And yet we don't think about it when we say it to children, plus in a classroom where they're totally humiliated. Okay, moving on from respect. Strong teachers create trust. That's the T, S-T-R-O-N-G, trust. Self-esteem can't stand alone. It has to be supported by other factors. A classroom climate based on mutual trust, as we say, paves the way to an unparalleled learning and growth. Once you have that trust, you trusted me at the beginning. Once I went against you, you lost the trust. Like, what is she doing? Why is she yelling at me? What am I doing wrong? You have to let your students know continuously that, you know what, I trust what you're telling me. And that is the second factor in STRONG. Now we're going to the R, responsibility. Responsibility in their students. Teachers promote the responsibility in their students. They set up guidelines. That's when we set boundaries. You arrive on time. You participate in the class, hand in assignments on time, do homework. You're organized. You're motivated. You study for exams. This all sounds great, doesn't it? It doesn't always happen. It sounds wonderful, wonderful. But you have to know the teacher, in this case, actually has to be more responsible than the child at this point. Because the teacher, number one, has to know each child. I remember years ago, because my husband and I own a learning center for over 40 years, and a child coming in. This poor child, the whole house was so dysfunctional. The parents were in a terrible divorce. There was screaming, there was yelling, there was... The child saw the father with this temper punching a television. Okay, and the teacher called me that he wasn't handing in his little notebook every Friday for spelling. That's what he had to do. He was 7 years old. And she said, we're trying to teach them responsibility. I said to the teacher, do you know what's happening in that house? How that child gets to school in the morning is amazing to me. The teacher's responsibility is know each student. Okay, let's go on to the next one. And strong teachers provide opportunities to learn about options. This word, people always say to me, "What? I don't understand what you're talking about. What does that have to do with building a strong student?" When a child fails, I always say to them, did you have to fail? Did you have any other options? I mean, was there anything else you can do? So let me show you the next thing what I do. I pull out this sheet, and I call it an option chart. And you fill out the problem, okay? The problem is I have a test coming up. So, and then what are your options? Well, you could do this, you could do that. You do have options, and children have to understand, and it gives them power, okay? For example, there was one child, she wasn't doing well in Hebrew school. And she said, well, I'm already 12, but I'm already babysitting for my sister because I want to get extra money because I want to get certain dress for this dance I'm going to, and then I want this, and I want this, and then I have too much homework, and now they're in the advanced placement when they're going into 8th grade for the math, and all this is going on. What can you do? I mean, how do you deal with this? There are options, and here's my option chart. You have overloaded after school. When another problem, courses are too demanding. Okay. 3, not facing reality. People who are in a day school, and you're working with high school, the high school students, you see this a lot. They're in sports, they're in band, they're in this, they're in a million different things. Or the parents, even with younger children, will say to you, well, I'm so sorry I didn't get the homework done, because we had the dance recital, and then my son had to go. That's fine. And those are your options. And if you choose that, that's fine too. But if you're failing and you're complaining about it, there are options. And sit down with the children. Again, you're going to be receiving one of these charts. Take it, copy it, use it in your schools. And when there's a problem, sit down with the child and give them that power that they can walk through this with you at home, with their parents. Bring in the parents, talk to them. It doesn't have to be this way. Sometimes in life, and unfortunately, some horrible things could happen, and there was no option. What could you do at that point? But for the most part, people do have options. So that's our STRON. N is critical. Helping students fulfilling their needs. The teachers, again, know your students. There are so many problems. If you look at this little PowerPoint picture here, you see up in the left-hand corner, you see a dad reading to a child going to sleep. So many students suffer from sleep deprivation. I told my daughter I'm going to mention this. She's a chemistry professor, and we were going through strong and learning, and we were talking about needs. And she said to me, one of the biggest needs that I have with the kids that I'm working with, they're exhausted. These are college students. And she said they are tired. They don't eat well. This is college. Well, picture what's going on with little ones. Okay, so if you see there's a child that keeps dozing off, so the sleep is tremendous. I have to say, though, if you're working in an after-school Hebrew school, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, who came up with that? I think research has shown that is the hour of the day when everyone's the most tired. So now we have school is set up at 4. Kids are coming in exhausted. Teachers are tired. So it's beginning with a negative right there. We do have to look at our options. But right now, I don't think any of us can think of any other way of doing this. Sunday mornings, there's an option. Okay, well, Sunday mornings, there's so many things in competition. There's so many sports and so many things happening Sunday mornings. But that's another whole story, another whole book. So let's go on. So the needs. You noticed here, need for exercise, need for good eating, well, need for a hug, just so that they know that the parents, the teachers know if there's something going on at home where the child's being neglected. And then, of course, the need to make sure that they feel well. Okay, so the next thing deals with goals. STRONG, goals. There are short-term goals and there are long-term goals. Short-term goals, for example, the goal is I got to get the homework done tonight. I have to exercise. Its short-term goal is eating a good meal for dinner. These are short-term goals, combing your hair, brushing your teeth. I remember years ago I had a little boy who came in and he was so overwhelmed. And he said, how much can a 10-year-old do? And I said to him, what's wrong? He said, my mother wants me to feed the cat every morning. I have to get up, I have to comb my hair, I have to eat breakfast, I have to get dressed. How much can a 10-year-old do? And so you have to know your child, know your student. Some can handle more than others. Okay, those are your short-term goals. Long-term goals are the targets for the future. They can be very vague at some point because you don't really know what you want. But you know if you want to go off to college someday, or you're thinking about going into the honors classes or whatever, or you actually think about you do want to be a doctor, you want to be a math teacher, you want to be a singer. Those short-term goals are what are going to lead up to your long-term goals. The next thing I'm going to talk about creating genuine self-esteem. So many people walk around, and I hear so many parents or teachers, they use the word, they have this feeling of self-worth, the feeling of self-esteem. Self-esteem, it does not stand alone. And so many children have this inflated, so many adults have inflated self-esteem. Okay? It's really not based on much. You're talking about how that's significant, other views you. Okay, and you have all these different parts of self-esteem. There's this absolutely adorable story about this psychiatrist who's working with a mouse. And the mouse is so afraid of the cat. Okay, so the psychiatrist says, you're brave, you can do it. Don't always think positively. Okay, and starts going through all this. The mouse feels great. He walks out of that office, the self-esteem is here. Within 2 seconds, the cat's around the corner, cat finds him, that's the end of the mouse. What's the moral of the story? The psychiatrist had to help the mouse learn, because that's part 2, learn strategies to get away from the cat. So self-esteem cannot stand alone. You have to learn what to do. not have this so-called inflated self-esteem. So let's go on to part 2. Part 2 of our workshop deals with learn. How do children learn? It focuses on helping all students learn. So let's move on and let me show you. First of all, now you have your emotional and social base, okay? You've got to maintain that. You've got to maintain that positive environment that's conducive to learning. Okay, once they have that, they're able to learn. But if you have a child that is emotionally or socially suffering, okay, or they don't have that base, it's going to be difficult for them to learn. The reason students' emotional social strength could get lower, they could come into school feeling fine, because remember at home, their perception is mom and dad think I'm great. Now they're into school. All of a sudden, they can be in this classroom. If they feel their classmates think they're stupid, which many kids will say to me, I'm just stupid. And I say, did someone tell you that? No. I just think my friends think my teacher thinks I am. Okay. If the child, there's suddenly that feeling of self-worth is going to start to go down. If the teacher criticizes them or embarrasses them in front of the class, that could last a lifetime. If most of you think about a teacher that did something that you were so embarrassed at the time, you never forget it. And if they do poorly on a test, or they do poorly in class, or they come out with an answer, parents always say to me, but my daughter won't even raise her hand. I don't blame her. Nobody wants to raise their hand and feel they said something stupid. Okay, so how do the teachers avoid these pitfalls? Teachers know how to teach so that every student learns. Here's what I'm going to show you now. We came up with another acronym. I love acronyms, obviously. LEARN, L-E-A-R-N. Part 2 is L-E-A-R-N. L stands for level, which we'll go into in a minute. E is engage, A is activate, R is repetition, and N is neural change. Let me explain what each one means here. Okay, let's start with the start. Let's begin at level. What is the level? It means the level of the student, and you build from there. You can't go too high, because if you start too high, the child gets totally confused. If you start too low, they're going to be sitting there looking out the window like, okay, is this over? And they say, I'm bored, or it's too easy, or whatever. Got to find out the level. This assessment, you find out the level of the child in Hebrew school. And we're going to show you exactly how to use it. Okay, next is the E, L-E-A-R-N, E, engage. Engage the student. The entire time, you have to keep them engaged. How do you do this? Because, kids are looking, especially 4 o'clock in the afternoon. How do you keep these kids engaged? Or if they're in 2 o'clock in the afternoon at a day school, it's hard to keep them engaged. You engage them. What we've done and what we've come up with, a whole product, actually, it's playing. Children love to play. So that positive, emotional, social environment is maintained playing these games. Next is A, activate. You have to activate the mind and the body. That you'll get the most learning happening if kids are moving, not sitting at their desks. They're getting up, they're playing, they're having contests with each other. Next, after activate, you are up to R in learn, rehearse. Rehearse, rehearse. I don't care if you call it repetition, practice. You can't learn until you've practiced enough. Now, it's all individual. Some children and adults can learn something in a second. They see it, they remember it. Others need to practice it over and over and over again. Playing cards, that's part of our strong learning system. They just keep practicing and they don't even realize it, and they're learning. The last one now, neural change. There's actually a change in the neurons and their connections when you've actually learned something. So how would you know? Go back to the assessment that you did at the beginning. If they now have it, you move on. If they don't have it, you practice again, and it doesn't matter. It's not saying to the child, you're punished because now you have to practice. You don't know this. They're just playing. They're playing. Kids will play, and they'll get the repetition. So whether you're using our card games, you make up your own card games, no matter how you do it, look for material that children can play, because research has shown that if you are playing, you will learn more. Okay, now we have the star, and now we've learned about the neural change. Okay, so now going on to challenges. This is part 3. Part 3 is the third part of the strong learning system. We went through creating that emotional, social base, that development that is so critical for children to learn. Now we went on to part 2. How do children learn? Okay, now we're going on to part 3. Challenges. These are challenges for the teacher. It's so funny. You can take all these courses, you can do all this, and now you know about the emotional and social foundation you need. You know about learning, and all of a sudden the kids aren't learning. You're going, what is going on? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about right now. Some things you can't control. First of all, whether you have a day school, whether you have an after-school Hebrew school, and the school board decides you're going to be using this in this program, okay? And things happen and you really just don't know what to do. And you're saying, they say, no, we're going to only make one class. I know there's 24 kids in it. I know it's a little large. But you know what? You're a great teacher. You'll know what to do. You can't control that. So if you're a teacher, what your administrators do, talk to them, discuss it with them, but you may not be able to control it. You can control, though, what you do as a teacher in your classroom. Okay? You are the one creating that environment. You're the one, just like at the very beginning, I created an environment. I could control that. Whether I made you feel good, whether I made you feel stressed, the teacher controls that. You can control that. How prepared you are. A teacher can control whether they're prepared for class or not. I mean, I'll never forget my first day of teaching. I was so excited. I wanted to be a teacher like my whole life. And I walk in, they give me 30 children, 3rd grade. I have a child in that class who could not write his name, and another child who not only could write his name, he was reading on 10th grade reading level. So now I'm there and I'm thinking, okay, how do I do all this? They didn't teach me this. And I give out my first assignment, which of course, talk about your summer vacation, because that's when most people do that first day of school. So now I hand this out. Before I'm done handing it out, I have kids raising their hand. I'm done. What do I do next? Okay, I started realizing, okay, what do you do? How do you deal with this? I wasn't prepared the first day because I didn't know that would even happen, never even thought about it. I was 21, fresh out of college. And then the worst came. They all go out to lunch, and they come in after lunch, and the kid's holding a dead bird. I stood there, let me tell you, panicked, looking, thinking, oh my God, I've learned all these wonderful theories and ideas and all these things. I don't know what to do. So we had telephones in a room. We had no cell phones or anything. And I called the nurse. And I said, I'm sending someone up to you with a dead bird. You'll know more what to do with this than I know what to do with. So that's how I solved that problem. Be as much prepared as you can. Next, how you address each unique issue that presents itself with any type of group that you're working with. Okay, talking about challenges teachers face also. Children, just look at each child. Remember we talked about know your child? Know why they're struggling. Some of them have physical issues. They could have hearing loss, poor vision, health problems, social issues, peer pressure. A child may hate to come to school because of the peers, bullying, which is a big problem in schools, educational issues. Not dealing with disabilities, but just dealing with deficient study skills who truly don't know how to study. Most kids will say, oh yeah, I studied. They don't know how to study. They think they look at a piece of paper and, oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, got it, okay. Things stay in your short-term memory 30 seconds to a minute. That's it. So help your children learn how to study. I mean, as I talked before about the chunking, about understanding, go through this with them. Poor organization, time management skills. It's very hard for children to deal with time management. And parents will say, oh, you're just going to study now the night before? Instead of putting the child down, talk about it. Set up like schedules with them and say, when would we begin? Maybe 10, 15 minutes a day, learning just the 3, 4, 5 things at a time. That will help them. They don't know this. Emotional and home issues. Remember the little boy I said that school was so wrapped up with getting the homework in? I don't know how he was surviving. Drug and alcohol abuse by the high school. There are things going on, and we all may miss it. As a teacher, going back to the R in strong, the responsibility of the teacher. Anxiety, phobias, school phobia, anxiety over school. Now we're going to get into just your basic weaknesses that children may have, academic, cognitive weaknesses like a reading disorder, dyslexia, which is not reading backwards. By the way, having dyslexia, it is having difficulty putting a sound with the image. It's in the language part of the brain. Has nothing to do with reading backwards. But if you see a child's really struggling, now with Hebrew, it's very hard. It's almost as if all the children come in and as if they all have dyslexia, because it's very hard to put a sound with an image because you have nothing to put that image with. You don't know what you're reading usually. If a child has trouble writing, they may have trouble writing in Hebrew. It's going to still happen. It's going to be the same difficulty writing, which is called dysgraphia. If you're in a day school, you may have children with dyscalculia, okay, which is a math disorder. You may have children with expressive or receptive language disorders, like I was talking about Katie. She had a receptive language disorder. Okay, she did, when she learned about English, she didn't put it in the right context. Okay, you have ADD, you have ADHD, you have all these different issues going on in your class. Not to say anything about what you're going to be looking at, learning styles. Even if a child doesn't have an actual disorder, you all know yourself, you learn better visually, or some learn better auditorily. They learn better if you tell them the story or if you read it to them. Others have to actually look at it, they have to see it. Otherwise, they're not going to get anything out of auditory. Others have to be part of it, tactile, kinesthetic, touching things. Okay, or someone, they're equal. They have a little bit of each. But watch your students and see how different ones learn, and give different types of assignments that the visual student will love to do, or the auditory student would love to do something else. Give them assignments that they're comfortable doing, and they'll do them if it leads towards their own personality. Okay, the next thing is teachers include rigorous content. That's a very big deal now. They're using that word rigorous to help students learn knowledge. Use higher order thinking skills. What that means is the lowest form of teaching is recall. You teach something, you ask them, they spit it back. That's it. Next comes understanding, comprehension. Do they understand it? But start talking to students on higher levels, because you'll be shocked. Kids really would love it. You'd start going into analysis. Why did that happen? What would have happened if this happened or that happened? Compare and contrast. Discover different things with them. Like, what would have happened if such and such happened? So look at Bloom's taxonomy, and you'll learn much more about the higher order thinking. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. A lot of you may be nodding your heads going, oh yeah, I know that one. Okay, next thing. Strong teachers also know the obstacles that may be preventing the students from achieving. I call it the 3 shuns. Now, it sounds S-H-U-N-S. It's shuns, T-I-O-N-S. Lack of motivation, disorganization, and procrastination. You know, the child who says, yeah, I'm going to start that assignment in a minute. just have to get some ice cream. Well, the minute I have the ice cream, I'm getting started. I just have to give someone a call. Adults procrastinate, okay? Those three shuns create such frustration in parents. I mean, but you remember, you have options. So all those three shuns create frustration in parents and teachers. Look for your options and figure out how to help the child. That's another whole workshop on just how to deal with the three shuns. But we're going to move on to the 4 terrible twos. You may have children in your class that are struggling because they work slowly. They work very slowly. I just had a little boy that I tested, and they've had him in remedial reading since 1st grade. He's going into 4th. He hates it. And the parents can't figure this out because when he's home, he's reading just fine. I tested him. I said, he doesn't have dyslexia. He doesn't have anything. He's so bright. Goes slowly. And I turned to him and I said, do you finish all your tests? He goes, no, never. I can't get them done. He goes slowly. I've met so many students like that. They work slowly. And all of a sudden, you go put the test through a Scantron or through something else, and you go, oh, failed. Failed because he didn't finish. So if you have children that work too slowly, look into giving them extra time. See what you can do to help them out. Some are too tired. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, many of those kids are exhausted. Too overstressed. They have so much homework, or they just didn't get onto the little league team or something, and they're stressed out. Or maybe something's happening in the home. Too much multitasking. Interesting. There's been research on that. And they took teenagers who were multitasking, doing their homework. They were also talking to their friends and texting. And they took others who just did schoolwork. Then they separated the texting and the TV. They separated everything. They had no multitasking. They did better on tests. And when they tested them a week later, they still did better. So the multitasking, too much multitasking, is not good. We're about done. I have to tell you, I enjoyed so being with all of you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got something out of it. If you need to talk to me or you need to find out more information, please feel free. Just go to HebrewSchoolFun.com. It's been a pleasure talking to you and being with you. Thank you.